to the Warrior Supercast. This is the podcast for the Winton Woods City School District, and we're going to keep you up to date on things that are happening in the district. Today we have in our studio the superintendent of the Winton Woods School District, Mr. Anthony Smith. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it.
There's a lot we could talk about in the district, but I think one of the biggest things parents have questions about right now is transportation. There's been a lot that has been worked on and fixed and caught. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with transportation and getting the kids to school.
Well, I think everybody understands that's the first tier, getting the kids to school. And we had a rough moment where we had a shortage of drivers, and we are working diligently to rectify that by having more drivers trained, more people trained, even our own staff trained in being able to step in and drive the bus. We've also had the pleasure through our ESSER funds to the relief money to purchase vans so that we can make small trips with students. We even put in a situation where if the bowling team is traveling, it doesn't make sense to take a full yellow bus when there's only 4 kids on the team. The bus can actually accommodate us. The golf team, the van can actually accommodate us. So we put those pieces into place, and of course people knew that with COVID, with the chips, the vans came later. They are here now, and so we're tagging them now with the logo and all the information. So it'll make us a lot more efficient than we have been.
So this is a process you started before school started. You were looking at alternative ways to get kids to school. Absolutely. When you realized that the busing was going to be tight.
We knew that the busing was going to be tight. We started working on our van delivery system in February of last year, knowing that, hey, there's going to be some problems, and it's all across the country. I think our drivers have I think they've been very deliberate. They've been very, very helpful. They've been very, very supportive. They've used double routes. And I think the average person thinks that the bus leaves the South Campus and goes to the North Campus, and it's one trip. That bus makes many, many trips to the ECC, to the North Campus, to the community building, back again, different pickup times, different start times. So what we've done now for parents at no cost, no additional cost to taxpayers, there were some students that started school at 8 o'clock, and then some students started at 8:30 at the same campus. And so rather than have parents sit and wait in their cars waiting for the next group to come in, we've been able to accommodate our parents by letting both groups of kids come in at the same time, 8 o'clock. We give them some special activities, special treats, special incentives, and some enrichment, and parents are dropping off both kids at the same time. Same thing at the end of the day. Some students end at 4:30, some students end at 4 o'clock. We're saying we will hold your kids until 4:30 so that they can make sure that you're only making one trip around the bend to take care of your kids and your needs.
That's so helpful because many of the families in the district aren't dropping one kid off at school.
No, they're not.
And you almost never wind up with 2 kids with the same schedule.
No.
But that parent still has the same work schedule.
Absolutely.
And the same other things going on in their family.
Absolutely.
So to be able to make one trip, and of course for your buses, you don't have enough to be making extra trips.
No,
you need
no,
everyone to be
not.
getting on at the same time.
And so in order to consolidate it, it was very helpful for the drivers. It made our routes a little bit more succinct.
Okay. And there's another benefit to the vans. So the vans are more flexible with smaller groups, and they're great for teams. But you don't need the same kind of extra above and beyond licensing for those, which is an extra difficulty when you're trying to recruit enough drivers.
Absolutely. So imagine an athletic team finishing at the end of the day. Instead of the driver using their own car, and I get concerned about the liability of it, they can drop off each kid in the van. You know, parents will feel more secure seeing a big Winton Woods logo dropping their kid off as opposed to a private car.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's more accountability of that.
Absolutely.
The parents know who's supposed to have their kid in the car. Yes. That makes a big difference.
And it makes us very efficient because we understand that in many cases, the parent has a different schedule, and all of a sudden, I thought that I could get back to the school to pick my kid up after the activity. I can't make it. You can't really take a yellow bus and drive them all the way through. So they make the call to the coach, and they say, Coach, is it possible to drop my kid off? And guess what? You don't have a child waiting, indefinitely for the parent to come. And of course, the coach has a family too that he needs to get back to.
And it sounds like you had this ready to go. They would have been ready to go for the school year, except that the same supply lines that are keeping people's
Absolutely.
construction projects from getting done and everything else was also keeping those vans from making it to the district
Yes.
on time.
Yes, absolutely. Same issue, same all the way through. The one thing that we did find out is through some research, we found out that school districts that have large populations of underrepresented kids as far as socioeconomic conditions are concerned, they actually pay the highest fees as it relates to building construction and maintenance because they're trying to keep these buildings up. So I know the South and the North Campus is not really our main conversation anymore because we're already in it, but the timing for us was impeccable because we were able to get our students in, get them launched, get them settled before all of the construction barriers came into play. There are some districts right now that are starting right now, and I think it's a stretch because of all the restrictions and the limitations and the fees and supplies and products are going up. We were blessed that we hit it at the right time.
Absolutely. The timing is amazing. Anyone who's starting their construction now doesn't know when their materials are going to make it. The fact that you were finishing
Yes.
at the time that you finished, but also the new buildings cost less. I remember when we had all kinds of programs about the details in the new buildings, and one of them was that they're efficient. Rather
Yes.
than continuing to operate in the old buildings that needed continual investment of money to upkeep, these are designed to be more efficient, which is key in a time when everything is short right now.
Power outages.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a thing of the past for us. We have backup generators connected to the buildings. They're going to be cooled the right way, heated the right way. And I do appreciate the public supporting the endeavor because it was big. It was a big move on their part to make the commitment to kids and to make the commitment to the community. And now we're fortunate that we have these great buildings that kids could learn and grow in every single day.
So one of the things we talked about with the vans is how it really increases the flexibility for the district to keep the kids involved in their extracurricular activities. And I feel like that is a really good segue to talk about. One of the other things we wanted to talk about was as we went through COVID and talked about keeping kids up to date academically and then transportation, just getting them back in the building.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we almost don't have time to talk about in the middle of all that was the emotional health of the students. Now they're back in your buildings and the teachers have them all back in their classroom. But what they've got is a whole class of students who have just had a very stressful year.
Right. I think people need to understand this term trauma-informed care because some kids have been traumatized being isolated. Yeah. Isolation can traumatize anyone. And many of our kids have not been socially connected with their peers for almost a year and a half. That's overwhelming. That is one of the most overwhelming things. So now their adjustment period is absolutely kind of taken hold. They get a little out of sorts because now I don't know what to do with all of this other energy. I see my friend, I see where the gaps are. I'm trying to make up as much as I can, but I do know that with organized activities, keeping kids engaged in sports and music and the theater and the arts, that changes it dramatically. The more kids that are involved in activities, the better they do academically, especially during this emotional time.
And we're seeing that now. Waycross, of course, is there to record these concerts and the football games and the different sports that are back in action. And the district has worked really hard to make sure there were safe ways for the students to get reconnected with all of their favorite activities.
Absolutely. We ran a very robust summer program, one of the biggest that I've ever been involved in. And we held it at the North Campus. And it was for all grade levels. It was not necessarily just I'm academically dysfunctional, I'm academically struggling. It was quilting, it was making videos, it was learning how to make music videos, it was poetry, it was all kind of fun things so that it wouldn't just be an overburden to the students. Many of those classes were taught by administrators, principals, assistant principals. They volunteered to do it because they wanted to reconnect and get kids back acclimated to this place called school. School is not in its normal function right now because we're still wearing masks. But the masks are essential. We have one of the lowest incident rates in the area based on mitigation of COVID-19 because we came out with the attitude, here's the research, here's the information, we're going to make the commitment to the mask. And there's not been parent opposition, there's not been student opposition, there's not been teacher opposition. So we are really blessed that parents and students have kind of joined forces to say, if this is what we say is the safest thing to do, then that's what we'll do.
Sure, and if that's the one extra thing that will make it more possible to reconnect with all of these programs, we've talked about how difficult it can be to be isolated for a long period of time. And then also, to a degree, the whole family finds themselves isolated, trying to keep up without the support that they would normally get from the classroom. Now that we've got all those kids back in the classroom in the safest possible way, but they're still dealing with stress and trauma from the past year, how does that affect your staff and your teachers? Because they don't have one of them at home trying to get through virtual school. They have a whole classroom full that are just reacclimating themselves to having all these kids around.
Well, believe it or not, in some schools, DI, what's called direct instruction, actually becomes a deterrent to me because you're sitting in rows and you're just kind of spouting out information. Project-based learning in this particular situation is a gold mine because it gives a lot of interaction where there's movement, there's activity, there's presentations, kids are collaborating. So it doesn't give them this isolated environment. It actually overstimulates them and gives them a different environment about how do you collaborate with your peers in order to create the best product.
So that's a chance for the students to take some of that energy because they're so excited that they're back in this group situation again, and they have ways to direct it.
Yes.
And I have the new North Campus, and I've had the chance to walk around and take a look and talk to students and teachers after they started in there, and just the fact that they're moving a little more physically, they're just moving more, they're interacting with each other more.
And the good thing about it, when you look at the North or South Campus, the spatial activities in the building really enhances it because it's made for movement. It's not made for isolation. The hallways are wide, the ceilings are tall. I mean, you've got a lot of activities that are going on throughout the school every single day, especially in the small learning communities. And I think kids really benefit from it. Eventually, they'll blend into it. It will feel better to them because I think when you interview some of the students, I'm telling you, and the staff as well, Mrs. Denny worked with me on coordinating 52 focus groups. 52 focus groups where I had groups of teachers and staff in groups of 10 to meet with all of them with COVID, and not that they had COVID, but doing that COVID activity where I wanted to know, what are your fears? What are your concerns? What about your loved ones at home? What's your apprehension? What are you concerned about? What drives you to come back each day? And some of the stories were so compelling. Without running those groups, I would have never been able to capture the information that I captured. What people are concerned about now is, when is it going to happen again? When am I going to have to go into my isolated pod again? Parents are worried, when am I going to have to go and try to teach my kid, remotely again? Is this asynchronous thing going to happen? Is this going to turn into a blended day? And so when you think something is going to happen, it's very difficult to stay steady in your prior situation because you're always wondering, how do I prepare myself for the next thing? Anybody that we know who's had a major injury by participating in activities, they worry, will this happen to me again? And they're very apprehensive about, how far do I go? You're talking about professional athletes who need psychologists to work with them after major injuries. So the kids have been traumatized, the teachers have been traumatized because we run this whole platform called peer relationships, and some of the teachers, they're peers with each other. So they've had the same isolation and the same issues where they couldn't connect with their loved ones.
Now that they are settled into the new buildings and they are able to do more collaborative things, not just with their students, but between staff and between their colleagues and their peers, are you seeing that helps their emotional well-being and their health and the way they can support each other as staff?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we all have to kind of grapple with is when the adults are out of control, when they're anxious, the kids are anxious. They follow the same model. And when the adults are calm and they're confident and they feel good about the experience, the kids reflect that same thing. So we make people excited just by our presence of being the big people in the room. And the kids are saying, hey, how do we really balance this thing out and not make it so excited and not get so excited and get overzealous because we can't control the emotions of each other?
Sure. Are there particular programs in place that you really see, or even staff members that you really see either coming alongside either the students or the staff and just helping them maintain that equilibrium?
Well, again, in our professional development series that we run every month, we've been talking to staff about social-emotional well-being. And how do you keep an environment calm? How do you keep the situation from erupting? How do you keep kids in a balanced conversation where they understand how to work with each other? So what they've seen now is staff collaborating with each other. The more staff collaborates, the better kids produce. It's just a different process. I was watching the middle school cheerleading tryouts this week, and usually there's probably about 32 girls that are trying out. It's like 84 girls because their parents are saying, I need to get you engaged in something. I need to get you engaged in some activities that's going to make you feel better about being with your peers. The other part is kids want to be around other kids. And so you may have a young person who says, I was never going to be involved in this activity, but since this is the only thing I have to grab on it. I have to hold on to it for dear life because I don't know when it's going to be lost again. You had young people participating in activities that really didn't get a chance to shine because COVID came. Mm-hmm. No one got a chance to come to their activities or their events to cheer them on. So it's like a void in a time warp where life kept moving, but not at the same pace. So we're trying desperately to catch back up with it. But again, some people are a little hesitant to get all the way involved because what's the next thing? What's the next thing that's going to come?
So if you had those students in front of you here in the studio, if you had junior high students and high school students and younger students that just, they're hesitant, but they just want to get involved and have students around them again, what would you tell them?
Well, one of the main things that I would share with them is every day that you wait to get involved, you're not involved. So you have to start now because you never know when it might happen. But getting involved right now, guess what? You're sealing the deal because another kid is going to come with you because they feel comfortable about your existence. So getting involved right now helps everything kind of move in the same direction. You know, holding back, waiting for it to be perfect utopia, that's not realistic. Getting involved right now keeps everybody involved.
That's a really good point. It's not about the perfect match of an activity. No. It's not about, are you the most perfect student at that activity?
Right.
It's about the interaction and the relationships, and you'll bring your friends into that activity with you, and maybe you'll get better at it, or maybe you won't.
Maybe
but it's
you won't.
Not even about that.
But you're in developing the relationship. One of the people say, Superintendent, how do you evaluate your coaches, your athletic coaches? My evaluation is very simple. There may be another team that's better, that had better athletes, more seniors, more kids coming back, and more five-star athletes. We may just have regular kids. But for me, I don't really evaluate the coaches based on wins and losses. I judge it based on, did they keep their GPA up? And if you started out with 58 kids, did you end up with 58 kids? That's the difference for me. The win and loss, we're fortunate that we're in the playoff this week. However, it's really not about if you won or lost. It's like you kept a cohesive group of kids together for the same purpose.
Almost like they'll do well as a team if you take care of them as an
Absolutely.
individual.
Absolutely, yes.
So I'll take a minute to say then, if students want to get involved, if you're listening to this thinking, yeah, but I'm not connected to any of these things, there are athletic opportunities, there are music programs and drama programs, there are clubs, and you have a really thorough website. So
Yes.
I want to mention it. I want to say www.wintonwoods.org. Parents, go check a look at it. Students, go take a look at it. Also, the district's Facebook page constantly has the latest things coming up, the events coming up, opportunities for parents to get connected and learn about the things that are coming up in the district. So that would be the first step. That would be, how do I know what's even available to get involved in? Is let's go look at the website.
Believe it or not, some of our activities that young people are involved in, they came up with the idea and said, can you create one of these? Can we have a this? Can we have a that? And it's amazing because I think for the most part, adults keep trying to tell young people what they need, but sometimes they know what they need. And then we ask this question, and I believe every adult in the world has asked this question to a kid. What do you want to be when you grow up? Okay? And the kid should be responding, what are you willing to expose me to? That's where it really comes into. What are you really exposing me to so I can be what I want to be? Because without exposure and opportunity, I don't know what's out there.
That's true. We have no business asking them that if we're not going to let them try a lot of things.
You're right.
So if you're a student and you're hearing that question, what do you want to do when you grow up? Then ask that grown-up back, well, what do I get to try?
That's right.
And then you'll get to find out, what do you want to do? We have students, many of them from the Winton Woods district, that decide they might want to do television when they grow up, and they come try it. When we have a shoot, when we are covering your football games and your concerts, there can be students running those cameras, and they can decide that's a much better way to decide if they want to do that.
So for all the students out there who want to be superintendents, try it.
Yes.
You might love it. I mean,
there's your
know.
opportunity, kids. If you want to learn about becoming a superintendent, you have to catch Mr. Smith in the hallway and ask him about that.
Yeah, shadow me for hours and see how it turns out.
And you know, we're being a little bit facetious about it, but it's true.
You have to expose
find out
me
what
to
you want to
something
try.
bigger than the story that I came with.
Now, if that goes with other activities too. If there's something that they wish they had a club to do, then
they talk to us about the club. We find a sponsor for it, and then we're engaged.
Okay. So if you don't see what you want to do on that website, then find your teacher, find a grown-up in the school district, and say, hey, do we have one of these clubs? Can we have one of these clubs? And you might be the one. If you're thinking you want that kind of club, then there's at least a few other students that haven't said it out loud.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yes, ma'am.
Usually there's not just one student that's just came up with an idea completely out of the cloud. There's somebody else out there.
Other kids have been having conversations, and they're wondering, how do we make this real? We have this pact in the system called trust, respect, and responsibility. If a young person brought an idea and we actually embarked on that idea, they know they can trust the relationship that they have with adults.
And that comes back to that encouraging responsibility. One of the basic tenets that the district tries to do with students, and the basic premise of the layout, I know, of North Campus, is to make the students feel like they're responsible. They have this open area for dining.
Student voices are the most powerful voices we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I want to thank you so much for coming in, because I think that this connection, talking about keeping kids connected, first of all, by getting them there in the first place. So we talked about transportation, how the vans will give you a lot more flexibility, not just in moving the kids around, but also in hiring drivers and
all of that.
All of those details. But we talked about how those vans are getting the kids to the kinds of activities that are keeping them connected, which is really important for their emotional health. Their emotional health affects the health of their whole class, of their teachers, of the community, and it's important.
So we want to kind of keep encouraging young people to stay involved, stay connected, and make sure that these opportunities for parents, but we want the district and the community to work hand in hand to build the best community ever.
Well, thank you so much. We have covered a lot in a short amount of time, and I'm looking forward to, as we go forward through the year, just the future projects that we'll get to hear about and talk about. And
absolutely. We'll bring some students on and talk about some of their shared interests and projects. And we'll be able to talk to about some young people about some of the struggles they've been through, and now they've overcome the struggles because now we are continuous and it's sustainable.
That's fantastic. We can talk about what we think the students are going through ad infinitum, but really
they know.
They'll tell us
yes.
what's really going on.
Absolutely. So thank you again.
And thank you for listening to the Warrior Supercast. That means you are staying in touch with what's going on in the Winton Woods City School District.